Well, good morning everyone, and welcome once again to Ed's Orchids. Now, something a little bit different today. I thought we'd look a little bit at fertiliser instead of looking at plants again. You know, I'm moving all my stuff out of the greenhouse indoors for winter, so I'm sort of going to produce my own fertiliser for the winter periods. You know, taking into account that they'll not use as much fertiliser in winter as they would in the long hot days of summer. They won't get enough, well, in summer you get about 12 to 14 hours of daylight, and in winter you might get 8 to 10. So it stands to reason, I think, that they won't use as much fertiliser and nutrients during the winter months. Now what I've done, I've split all the components up, you know, the potassium, the calcium and magnesium, nitrogen and all like that, into 5 separate jars. And what I'm going to do, I'll show you these, and what I'm going to do, I'll take a bit out of each jar and put it into 2 gallons of RO water, and I'm going to feed right in winter around about 150 to 200 parts per million, and no more than that. You know, the parts per million I'm going to put in when I show you, you know, is just sort of an average I put in. It doesn't matter if you put a bit more in or a bit less, but I'm not going to go over 200 parts per million. You know, the frags will not get changed from their twice a year teaspoonful of fish blood and bone. That's all they're going to get, so I won't be using this. I'll be using it for the Paphiopedilums and a few of the other ones I've got. Well, actually all the other ones I've got. Well, these are the jars that I'm using, and they were cheap enough, so they're good enough for me. And the P I've put on stands for, well, it's a mixture of phosphates and potassium. And I'll tell you something about it. On the 56 is the parts per million I'm putting in the RO water. So to say a few things about potassium and phosphates, they play quite a few roles in plant growth. Potassium is essential in photosynthesis by opening and closing the stomata on the leaves. It regulates CO2 uptake, and it plays a role in the production of adenosine triphosphate, which is, in layman's terms, a storage molecule for energy. And potassium is very necessary for healthy growth. It can be available in seaweed extracts, and the lack of potassium can cause dwarfism in orchids. Now the next one is nitrogen, and there's 44 parts per million I use in the water. Now nitrogen derived from urea makes it difficult for the plant to use, so it's got to be derived from ammonia or nitrates. So if you're using urea for the nitrogen, it's a big no-no for orchids. Now nitrogen is also used by the plant for photosynthesis. It helps the leaves to convert light and nutrients to carbohydrates, but too much nitrogen will make the plant grow very quickly, and it may also delay flowering. I'm sorry I'm shaking with that, but I've got to stand up and hold these to the camera for you to see. There's been a study recently of too little nitrogen on orchids, which causes the older leaves, you know, the lower leaves on plants, to be derived of all the nutrients that it wants, and so they go yellow and turn brown and eventually drop off. Well, this one is calcium, and I put 30 parts per million in that one. And I'll not go into any detail about calcium. If you want to know more about calcium, just have a look at Rick L. Orchids. He's very good on anything like this. And you know, calcium builds the cell walls up and is full of the structure of the plant. You know, if you get sort of, especially cattleyas, if you get new growth on cattleyas and they're showing black tips on them, that's nearly always a sign of a lack of calcium. So in that one I put 30 parts per million. And the next one is magnesium or Epsom salts, and I put 8 parts per million of this in, which is negligible. You know what magnesium does, it you know, if anybody's showing plants with yellow leaves and things like that, they just say, oh, bang a load of Epsom salts in and the leaves will green up. It's not always the case. It might be a shortage of nitrogen and things like that, but always have a bit of magnesium in your fertiliser. And the last one is seaweed extract, which we put 12 parts per million in. All these are just my ideas, don't go by them as being correct, because I'm no excuse me, I'm no expert on these things, but I've got a basic idea, that's about all, so I'll try and put it into practice. Anyhow, that seaweed extract, which also goes in, that's full of nutrients and does contain a little bit of potassium. Well, I've got a bucket full of our raw water here, and the parts per million should be around anything up to 4 or something like that, because I've been using it for a bit. But it's on at 3. So what I'll do, I'll start by putting the nitrogen in, and if you remember earlier in the video, I put 44 parts per million of this in. So this is a laborious job, by the way, so anybody who hasn't got the time won't be doing it. I'll put about 5 squirts of this in and see what it comes to. I'll change my mind, I'll put 4 in, because I don't want to put too much in and have to throw the our raw water away. Give it a stir. See, and we've only got 20 parts per million in there, so we need a little bit more. Put another 6 in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll see what that is. Give it a swizz around with this. You see, I put a little bit too much in, but what I'll do, I'll reduce that to between 40 and 50. Well, I've reduced that down to 49 parts per million, which is fine. So then I'm going to put some, what should we put in there? Some calcium, which is at 30 parts per million. So that should go up to around about 80. So we'll do it nice and slowly. 1, 2, 3. But you see the idea I'm getting at. I'll just give that a measure. That's only up at 65. So let's cheat and tip a bit in, because it's not exact science. Give it a stir around. And there we are, 82. So you see the idea. Just put the same ones in at every time, you know, whether it's 12, if your next one you're putting in, then it goes up to 92 and such and such and such like that, until you're around about 150 parts per million. Well, I suppose you get the general idea of what I was proposing to do, or what I have done. and I'm going to see if it works throughout the winter, and we'll get results on that. So I think for the next video we'll just do a little August update on the plants. I've got one or two coming into bloom. Not many though, probably 6 or 7, but I'll be pleased to show you them in the next video. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you to all my subscribers. Thank you to all the people who add comments on the channel, and I try and answer everyone as quickly as possible. So thanks very much again for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.